Hello, in today's video, the stalled global search for new antibiotics is revived by artificial intelligence, a former Google CEO warns AI could be used to harm and kill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain meets leading AI CEOs in Downing Street, Elon Musk's brain implant firm Neuralink gets approval for human trials, Europe pitches an AI Pact to plug the regulation gap fast, Tom Hanks on his never-ending movie career in the cloud. Tech stocks surge as wave of interest in AI drives a $4 trillion rally. And in our main story, the AI-enabled electric car that just became the world's best-selling vehicle as we deep dive into self-driving cars. And finally, what does Elon Musk find is harder to get hold of than drugs? My name is Tim Elsom. You're watching EYE4AI, bringing the very latest in artificial intelligence to all of humanity.
I never seen anybody do the things you do before.
But first, in a study published this week, a group of scientists from McMaster University and MIT in the US have discovered a new antibiotic that can kill a deadly hospital superbug. According to the World Health Organization, the bacteria being targeted is one of a group that pose the greatest threat to human health, with built-in abilities to find ways to resist treatment, as well as being able to pass along their genetic material to other bacteria to become drug-resistant as well. Jonathan Stokes of McMaster University explained the backdrop as to why this is so important.
And the last factor is time, right? It takes a long time, many months or more, to screen 1 million compounds, right? So given these drawbacks, and the resulting alarmingly lean antibiotic pipeline, which is coupled to growing global antibiotic resistance, we asked, can we leverage ML approaches in an attempt to discover antibiotics more quickly and less expensively?
To get the training data for their AI model, the researchers first exposed the bacteria grown in a lab dish to thousands of different chemical compounds to see which of those could slow down the growth of the bacteria. They then fed the structure of each of those molecules and its inhibiting abilities into the model. With the model having thus been trained, it then analysed many more thousands of compounds that it had not previously encountered. And about an hour and a half later, out popped a report with several hundred potential candidate compounds, which when tested in the lab, ultimately revealed 9 potential antibiotics, including the most potent that they went on to call Albicin. The scientists then tested the new molecule against the bacteria in a wound infection study in mice and found that Albicin suppressed the infection very effectively. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, this week told a bunch of senior business executives that he thinks AI presents an existential risk for humanity, which he went on to define as many, 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 many people harmed or killed. The software PhD said the technology could be misused by evil people when it becomes more advanced, especially its ability to identify software vulnerabilities in critical systems for hackers, and it likely being used to identify new biological weapons that could be unleashed on its creators someday. Schmidt focused specifically on AI's burgeoning ability to identify software vulnerabilities for hackers, describing these cyber issues as zero-day exploits. These are the security flaws in code that have only just been discovered and so haven't been patched up by the security teams and thus are essentially the hacker's dream environment. This week, Rishi Sunak was joined by the CEOs of OpenAI, Google DeepMind and Anthropic to discuss how to ensure the development of safe and responsible AI and how to approach governance for the next technological frontier. The PM outlined that AI safety will increasingly be an international endeavour, as agreed at the G7 recently, and thought, of course, that the UK was well placed to lead the international discussion regarding the measures and guardrails that are needed, and that this work would build on the UK's engagement already underway. The PM and the CEOs discussed the risks of the technology ranging from disinformation and national security to existential threats. They discussed safety measures, voluntary actions that labs are considering to manage the risks, and the possible avenues for international collaboration on AI safety and regulation. With the sudden increase in the perceived urgency to put in place some form of guardrails across the world, the British government is keen to be engaged as it tries to be, at one, aligned with its European neighbours, whilst also looking at how Britain can differentiate itself competitively. You may not have heard of Neuralink or understand why it's relevant to a discussion on artificial intelligence, so let me explain. Neuralink is a 7-year-old company that was formed by Elon Musk and a group of scientists with the aim of making devices that interface with the human brain, both being able to read information from the neurons themselves, but also to feed information directly back into the brain, with admittedly some mixed success so far. The so what? Apart from the idea of being able to help many people with serious brain diseases, which is pretty worthy in of itself, the eventual goal is human enhancement, also called transhumanism, with its ultimate goal to allow us to achieve symbiosis with artificial intelligence. Now, is that how the singularity occurs, basically turning us all into artificial intelligence? Or does that allow us to protect ourselves from artificial intelligence taking over? Because whilst we might reach singularity, we'll never then reach a point where AI can be more powerful than us. Anyhow, in my trailer, I talked about how lots of the best AI ideas come from science fiction, and this one is no different. Musk described his interest as coming partly from the science fiction of Ian Banks' Culture series, where there's a device called a neural lace that sits connected to both the brain and the central nervous system and performs a number of tasks, such as enhancing recall by recording its own memories and transmitting them back to the biological brain. The actual Neuralink probes are not dissimilar in their architecture, being composed mostly of a biocompatible material called polyamide, with a thin gold or platinum conductor, and those conductors are inserted into the brain by a surgical robot that's capable of inserting up to 192 electrodes every minute. And after some animal testing, yes, I know, sorry, for example, to monitor the neurons in a pig's snout as they touched different objects, or there was a monkey with a video game. In fact, the monkey called Pager was first shown how to play the classic video game of Pong in the conventional way. When he made a correct move with the joystick, he'd receive a delicious sip of a banana smoothie. As he played, the Neuralink implant recorded the patterns of electrical activity in his brain. This identified which neurons controlled which movements. The joystick could then be disconnected, after which Pager played the game using only his mind. Wow. Just imagine the latency I could get on Counter-Strike with this little beauty. Anyway, after some ups and downs, Neuralink finally announced this week that it's received approvals from the US FDA for a clinical study in humans, and that is big. Actor Tom Hanks has been speculating that artificial intelligence could one day recreate him on screen, which he said could keep his likeness performing long after his death. After starring as one of the first digital twin creations featured in a Hollywood movie, playing the conductor in the Polar Express, Hanks has been musing about what the future might hold.
I could get together and pitch a series of 7 movies that would star me in them, in which I would be 32 years old from now until Kingdom Come. You know, I could be hit by a bus tomorrow, and that's it. But my performances can go on and on and on and on and on.
The use of AI to create these digital twins, or to clone an actor's voice, has become a key point recently in upcoming negotiations between Hollywood studios and the union that represents US actors. At stake is who keeps control over any digital duplicates used in movies and TV, audiobooks and podcasts. If the studios gain complete control over the rights to an actor's likeness, they could potentially use these digital twins in new productions without ever paying actors or even getting their permission. The worst case scenario would leave each individual actor or performer to negotiate their AI-related rights without a collective bargaining agreement at all. And that, of course, would impact most actors, particularly those who lack the star power and leverage to negotiate favourable terms, which could make it super hard for any aspiring actor to achieve a sustainable livelihood in the future. That's why it's part of the unionised action. The likes of Tom Hanks is probably safe. It's the next currently undiscovered Tom Hanks who should be worried. Unless, of course, it's an AI to start with, in which case it's all good, right? The European Commission, as I was discussing last week, has already proposed its Artificial Intelligence Act that will establish the rules on banned and high-risk AI applications across the EU, whether created or used there. Whilst it's been in drafting form as early as 2021, the law is still being reviewed and negotiated between all the member states, and is expected to come into force no earlier than 2024, maybe even 2025. So with all the latest excitement, EU officials are now trying to shape a more immediate voluntary AI pact, one that would see companies like Microsoft, Google, OpenAI agree to non-binding principles around transparency and accountability as a stopgap solution for the rapidly developing technology. EU industry chief Thierry Breton met with Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google, this week, saying there is no time to lose in the AI race to build a safe online environment. A briefing put out by his office after the meeting said the EU wants to be proactive and work on an AI Pact ahead of incoming EU legislation set to apply to AI. The memo added that the bloc wants to launch an AI Pact involving all major European and non-European AI actors on a voluntary basis, and ahead of the legal deadline of the aforementioned Pan-EU AI Act. A rush of interest in AI has helped to fuel a $4 trillion rally in technology stocks this year, with the US Nasdaq exchange reaching its highest level since last August, in a week that saw the chipmaker Nvidia poised to become the next trillion-dollar company. The AI rally has helped lift the index 23% so far this year, with a number of semiconductor and software stocks having more than doubled in value as traders bet on massive growth in the industry. Nvidia, whose high-end chips are used to power the data centers used by the new wave of generative AI products such as ChatGPT, could soon become the first chipmaker to be valued at more than $1 trillion. Its share price has risen by 160% during 2023 alone, and it jumped 24% in one day this week after predicting soaring demand for its GPUs. Whilst they weren't originally built for AI applications, they came with a larger number of cores and the ability for parallel processing that's just not possible with traditional CPUs. And it's this capability, as well as them now being geared to AI specifically, that's proving so essential for the deep learning applications of artificial intelligence. Wuhan in China, Phoenix in Arizona, Stockholm in Sweden, Kaesong in South Korea, Edinburgh in Scotland, Chongqing in China. I could go on. These are just a few of a fast-growing number of cities across the world testing and even operating autonomous driving vehicles as public transport, be that taxis, minivans, buses. And then when you look beyond public transport to the huge growth in privately owned vehicles that have ever-increasing levels of automation, then you can see the reality of artificial intelligence is not just about pretty cool natural language applications that will do your homework. Nope, intelligent self-driving cars are fast becoming a reality. They need to see like a human, think like a human, and act like a human, all in the blink of an eye. Autonomous driving systems, or ADS, are very definitely becoming a thing, and they're such a sought-after prize in the transportation industry that more companies are taking on that challenge, creating the entirely new technology, the hardware, the software, algorithms, and business models as they go. Waymo, Tesla, Baidu, Cruise, AutoX, to name but 5. And whilst generative AI has suddenly got everyone asking questions about regulation, the same sorts of concerns have been considered in transportation for a while now. How do you get a robot to drive safely and even ethically? Do you need to have a safety driver behind the wheel of every self-driving car? And how would an AI solve the infamous trolley problem I spoke about in the channel trailer last week, of which more in a moment? And that buzz has grown further with the news this week that Tesla's Model Y became the first electric car, and one with some of the most advanced AI capabilities, to become the world's best-selling car in Q1 this year, selling over 250,000 units. And that's big for so many reasons that I'll come on to. Do you know how the motor car was first introduced? Well, in the autumn of 1885, Carl Benz's three-wheeled vehicle roared, puttered onto the scene and became the first successful internal combustion engine-driven car. The clever chap was awarded a patent the year after, and he became the first motor manufacturer just 2 years after that with the Model 3 Benz. The internal combustion engine wasn't the first self-propelled vehicle. Steam had already arrived 30 years earlier, but the motor car as we know it now came into a world where the driver had to be supplemented by at least one safety pedestrian. The Red Flag Act in both the UK and the US at the time stated, secondly, one of such persons, while any locomotive is in motion, shall precede such locomotive on foot by not less than 60 yards, and shall carry a red flag, constantly displayed, and shall warn the riders and drivers of horses of the approach of such locomotives, and shall signal the driver thereof when it shall be necessary to stop, and shall assist horses and carriages drawn by horses passing the same. It feels a little like we're back in the age of the Red Flag Act, but for the modern world. But let's take a step back. What actually are ADS, or autonomous driving systems? Well, they vary from company to company, but they generally rely on 5 major components. Firstly, image capture. Through a combination of video, radar, and LiDAR cameras, the ADS needs to perceive its surroundings as the sensors gather data in real time. Then, the images are analysed, often using deep learning neural networks, in effect, AI imitating the human brain, to spot patterns, paths, objects in the data. The system then applies machine learning algorithms to consider alternative options to progress on the journey and make decisions on how to navigate, avoid obstacles, and follow traffic rules. These algorithms are improved over time by the vast amount of data captured from the driving platforms themselves, as well as enhanced by both manual and automated training for both these labelling and prediction tasks. And finally, the compute power that drives it all. The huge parallel processing data centres to crunch the available data that continuously improves the capability of the system, as well as the compute being embedded in each of the ADS vehicles that have to make constant and near instantaneous life-depending decisions on every trip it takes. The regulations vary, of course, across the world, with the US having more variety at a state level, whilst the EU tries to agree a single standard across the member countries. But at least there is an internationally recognised definition of what automation means, with pretty much the world using the Society of Automotive Engineers, the SAE, definition of 6 levels of autonomy, ranging from level 0 to level 5. Level 0 means no automation at all, but actually that doesn't exclude the sort of assistance most of you and I are probably driving cars around with today, such as ABS braking, cruise control, those little orangey blind spot warning signals in our rearview mirrors. All that is actually considered no automation. Level 1 steps up to driver assistant and adds things like adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assistance. Level 2, or partial driving automation, is where the car provides constant assistance, accelerating, braking and steering, although the driver has to be 100% attentive and ready to take over at any time. Level 3, or conditional driving automation, means the system carries out all the driving functions, but the driver must still be seated in the driver's position and ready to take control when necessary or when requested. A little bit ambiguous, I think, with Level 2 personally. Anyway, then Level 4 is called high driving automation and is really the current nirvana of car automation. The essential difference between Level 3 and Level 4 lies in the fact that as well as the system doing all the driving, it's also able to intervene in case of malfunctions without involving the driver at all. And Level 5 being full driving automation, which means they require no human intervention at all, not even in an emergency, whatever the driving conditions or the state of the roads. The vehicle might not even have a steering wheel or pedals, and the passenger could sit anywhere and do anything whilst on board. So I hope that's clear. Oh, but then China decided to mix it up last year, and those SAE levels were no longer good enough for them, and they came up with their own 6-tier standard, which looks very similar, but then looks a little different. Coming back to how these companies are tackling the challenge right now, though, there are really 2 major ways that autonomous vehicles are developing. The first is through public transportation trials in limited geocached areas, but that push the autonomous nature really hard as a result. Waymo are probably one of the biggest examples. A subsidiary of Alphabet, who own Google, they operate fully autonomous taxis in a service called Waymo One that's been available in Phoenix, Arizona since around 2020, and now is also available in parts of San Francisco as well. There's a ride-hailing service with over 700 vehicles that you hail with an app and that takes you to your destination with no driver. It's currently limited to a geo-fenced area within Phoenix or within San Francisco, but the Phoenix one was the first world one to operate without any safety driver whatsoever. Waymo's approach sees it collect super detailed custom maps before deployment. What that means is that for each road that Waymo operates on, a physical driver drives a sensor-equipped vehicle down that road, allowing the set of LiDAR and other sensors to paint a 3D picture of the environment. The data's then processed to form a map that provides the context for the in-car systems such as speed limits, lane lines, traffic signals, and that context then allows the Waymo driver AI system to focus on perceiving that world around it, especially focusing on moving objects and making decisions as it goes. The second is the Tesla model, where they simply don't have the detail mapping up front and try to recreate the environment around them, relying on the onboard vision system of, in Tesla's case, 8 video cameras and available navigation maps to do the job. Whilst Tesla hopes this approach lets them drive everywhere without the effort of making and maintaining maps, it currently means their performance is perhaps less obvious on the road right now, but it may well be deeper in its ultimate intelligence once it works fully. Tesla are constantly and incrementally upgrading their autonomous driving systems across the Tesla range of vehicles sold to consumers across the world. In essence, each and every Tesla driver is a safety driver, both part of the Tesla beta for autonomous driving, collecting huge amounts of data for the company that allow them to improve the AI learning through the 4 million or so Teslas on the road today, and of which 360,000 of those drivers have the full self-driving subscription. What's most likely the case is that neither of these approaches is actually wrong. For the winners, and there will be several, possibly many, the prize is going to be enormous. Haulage fleets that need no drivers and operate 24/7 without getting tired or making mistakes. Driverless taxis that are always available whenever and wherever you want, and they always take the quickest route, unlike a London taxi. Your own car becoming a revenue stream, not just for you, but for your car manufacturer, as your shiny autonomous vehicle glides off your drive to perform a local taxi journey for a complete stranger whilst you're sitting down to dinner. Accident figures and road deaths will plummet, and the ability for road traffic density to increase in line with the population, as our autonomous vehicles will travel at higher speeds with less spacing, but with greater safety, will come to pass. Back to our SAE levels for a moment. Tesla provides more of a level 2 capability right now, but is edging towards level 3 with the full driving system as it's rolling out and improving. Mercedes actually has achieved level 3 authorization in the US, albeit with limitations such as the car is only responsible under 40 miles an hour. Waymo does sit at level 4 at the moment for its driverless taxis in Phoenix, but is obviously working within a much more limited and restricted environment that requires more upfront investment, as well as more expensive technology in car. I like to think of it with a pie analogy, and why not? Mercedes and Waymo are eating the autonomous driving pie a slice at a time, making deeper and deeper inroads to that automation in that way, whilst Tesla are nibbling their way all the way around the whole pie. In both cases, the whole pie is likely to get eaten up with full automation realised, and possibly even in a similar time frame. I wanted to look at one system in a little more detail from an AI perspective, and I'm going to take Tesla as the example because, to my pie analogy, Tesla is nibbling at this whole pie and in ways that I believe are truly the closest to trying to replicate the way in which humans drive, and thereby replicating the end-to-end process of what it is to be a human driver, where we see, we understand, we make decisions and we react. So firstly, the seeing and the understanding. First of all, vision. Tesla has 8 video cameras around the vehicle. No expensive LiDAR here. In fact, they removed any radar in 2021 and 2022. And just recently, they announced they would even be removing ultrasonic sensors from all future Model 3 and Model Y vehicles. This is part of Tesla's effort to make its vehicles' autonomous capabilities completely reliant on Tesla vision. The reason Tesla is putting so much faith into these cameras is that it believes it has developed a system that can perceive distance in a way similar to how humans do. This system would rely on the camera vision and artificial neural nets, and so remove the need for these radar and ultrasonic sensors. Combining these two concepts creates what's known as virtual LiDAR, which attempts to build a 3D representation of the car's surroundings from only the camera's data. Tesla is calling its application of virtual LiDAR an occupancy network system that uses this 3D map to decide which areas around the car are occupied by something and which are empty. Unfortunately, you can't simply take all the information from these 8 cameras and send it directly to an AI that will tell you what to do. This would just be way too much information to process at once. And our computers just aren't powerful enough yet to do that. What they do next is they then transfer these 8 cameras' data into a smaller space they call a vector space. This space is a 3-dimensional space and contains all the relevant information in the world, like the road signs, cars, people, road lines. This new space is then used for many different tasks the car will have to do, like object detection, traffic light tasks, lane prediction. In order to create that vector space, the pictures from the 8 cameras are calibrated and then sent into a special neural network that both condenses, extracts, and merges information efficiently before sending this into a transformer architecture that combines all the information coming from all 8 cameras into one 3-dimensional representation. Finally, this 3D representation will be saved in the cache over a few frames and then sent into another neural network that will use all these frames to better understand the context of the 3D space in order to make decisions. Which brings us on to the decision making and reacting. So, for the Tesla system to work, once it has seen and understood the environment, It needs to be able to make decisions in rapid time and execute them. And again, this is where AI comes in, as to be able to process all the sensible alternatives and make a rapid and accurate decision is at the heart of a successful ADS system. So, for decision making, Tesla has another AI module called the Planner that's designed to take a decision every 50 milliseconds or so. From the available data and information revealed in the 3D vector space model, the planning system has to now come up with predicted trajectories of all the objects in the relevant space, and therefore all the possible interactions between the ego, your car, and those other objects, whether they're cars, lorries, humans, animals. To do this, the system uses a parallelized tree search. It creates essentially a set of trajectory candidates that branch over multiple interactions to create a long enough horizon to assess the most sensible decision that maximizes comfort, safety, and progression to the end goal. The candidates it identifies are constantly being assessed by the neural network, which then branches on the most critical interactions first, such as how will I interact with this pedestrian crossing the road right in front of me now? This critical interaction then drives the path down which you follow and score each potential action according to the likelihood of hitting something, how comfortable that action would be for the occupants of the vehicle, and both the likelihood of human intervention and how close that action is to the actions taken by the human drivers across the huge dataset Tesla have built up over time. These all help derive the best and most appropriate decisions to take. So, how about the safety and ethics of our autonomous vehicles? There are plenty of stories in the press of self-driving vehicle accidents, liability claims, lawsuits. Perhaps not surprising, as we're essentially talking about artificial intelligence and lives, and what is a reasonable trade-off between AI and human life. Should we only engage AI when it's at least as efficient as us at keeping us safe, or is there a lower bar we should accept to keep accelerating progress? For sure, when a Tesla car is involved in an accident, it generates a lot of interest, especially if any driver assist features are engaged. Interestingly, Tesla actually released data on this for the first time at their 2023 Investor Day last week, and the data showed that, drumroll please, Tesla cars are actually safer than human driving when their full self-driving beta is activated. The data automatically connected from their fleet of vehicles revealed that FSD beta recorded only one collision for every 3.2 million miles driven in the last 12 months. In comparison, the average American driver had one collision for every 600,000 miles driven on the road. This means you're more than 5 times less likely to have an accident when you use the autonomous driving features of a Tesla. More people will for sure be injured and even killed driving in autonomous cars. And 0 deaths is, I'm afraid, not a realistic ambition for ADS. But if only 20% of the deaths that currently occur on the roads today happen in 2035, that will be a huge advance. And finally, to ethics. The ethical challenges posed by driverless cars are often illustrated by the trolley problem, beloved of moral philosophers. Imagine a trolley car, out of control, and 5 oblivious people on the track ahead. They will die if you do nothing. Or you could flip a switch and divert the car to a different track where it will kill only one person. What should you do? And from that, all sorts of bizarre abstractions have been created that bring personal relationships, uncertainty, and a whole bunch of other factors into the mix. There's a really interesting study, I hate to call it a video game, but it kind of is, currently being conducted by MIT called moralmachine.net. It's a platform for understanding and assessing human reactions to the moral dilemmas that would need to be at least considered by autonomous vehicles as they advance. Give it a go. I'll post the link in the description of the video. And anyway, I hope it never happens, but any of us might one day find ourselves making a split-second life and death decision in our cars. They're part rational decision, part instantaneous reflex, but they also draw on who we are as people, our priorities, and even our beliefs. And as our cars edge towards making these decisions for us, cases like this raise deep ethical questions. To drive safely in a human world, autonomous vehicles must learn to think like us, or at least to understand how humans think. But how will they learn, and which humans should they try to emulate? Should we try and replicate Asimov's famous rules on robotics? They say we should not allow a robot to injure a human being, or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Okay, so I swerve away from the person crossing the road in front of me. But what about Asimov's second law that says my robot must obey the order given to it by human beings unless, of course, it conflicts with the first law of not harming a human being. In facing the trolley problem, where there is no option to avoid harming a human being, not only what do I do, but what do I program my car to do? Does it prioritise the current fate or a lesser fate to someone who was not previously in danger at all? Does me swerving at all endanger me more, and therefore does my car decide to stay on course because I am its top priority? You can see the ethical dilemmas that start to emerge. It's fascinating to read and hear what the car companies are doing about this already. Volvo, for example, have expressed that they will prioritise the occupants of its vehicles first in such decisions. Tesla, meanwhile, have said they'll not take such decisions and will be driven only by avoiding accidents in the first place. Whether this is sustainable or not, or what exactly is the right answer, is difficult to define right now. Will we all have ethical sliders next to the air conditioning unit that define how altruistic or self-preserving we're feeling that day if a serious accident occurs? Will we have to decide whether older or younger people, men or women, cats or dogs are prioritised in cases of accident by sliding a knob every time we jump in the car? Of course, I hope not, although my vote is for the dogs. But the ethical dilemmas that we're passing to our vehicles, sure as hell better have thought it through before it has to make these sorts of decisions on my behalf whilst I'm having a snooze in the back. And bringing us back to the earlier story of the tech stock winners and the new AI boom, Elon Musk was talking to the Wall Street Journal about AI this week and about the huge growth in demand for NVIDIA's H100 GPU. Optimised for developing, training and deploying generative AI and LLMs, it's proving very popular with big tech companies and the new generative AI startups alike. Dubbed the Hopper after Rear Admiral Grace Hopper, who worked on some of the very first general-purpose computers, the H100 offers 30 times improvements on AI inference over previous models, where performance is so key to unlocking the best-performing AI models. Even Elon Musk, who elsewhere is building his own AI hardware, has bought several thousand NVIDIA chips for his new AI startup, X.AI. He talks about the massive compute investment required for AI.
Train a model of probably GPT-5 size, I wouldn't be surprised if they use at least 30,000, maybe 50,000 H100s, which are the latest GPUs, is not quite the right word, but the latest technology from NVIDIA. And then you need to run inference as well. So it's a lot of, the GPUs are, at this point, considerably harder to get than drugs. Actually, that's really not a high bar in San Francisco.
I'm sure Nancy Pelosi, who represents San Francisco in Congress, for those who don't know, is just chuffed with that comparison. Anyway, that's all for this video. Please subscribe, hit the bell and comment below if you'd like to, and I'll see you here next time on EYE4AI, bringing the very latest in artificial intelligence to all of humanity.
Dance for me, dance for me, dance for me.